The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Hello, listeners! I'm so grateful for the listener interest over the last few years, and I want to keep this podcast inspiring to you with my amazing goddess guests and to amplify the voice of the divine feminine in the world today. This podcast takes time, effort, and resources to share with you every few weeks. I have an ask of you. One of the ways to support the Oracle of Luna podcast is to become a subscriber to premium and bonus material. Each of the podcast episodes have 2 links at the bottom. It's quick and easy, should probably take you 1 minute, and for as little as $3 a month, you can support the show and become a subscriber. I really appreciate it, and it means a lot. Thank you, and blessed be. Merry meet! Welcome to another episode of the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, your host, and today I'm delighted to chat with Joey Morris. Joey is a Celtic Hedge Witch, Priestess of Morrigan, author, and the creatrix behind Starry Eyed Supplies. She shares information on topics such as paganism and Celtic Hedge Witchcraft on her Starry Eyed Witch YouTube channel since 2012. Joey has been serving the pagan community with videos, books, poetry, and witch items for over 10 years. Trained as a priestess, she has a unique perspective on integrating Celtic paganism for a modern age. Her latest book is Celtic Hedge Witchery, A Modern Approach. She lives in Plymouth, England. Welcome, Joey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I am so happy you're here. I love your new book. And how's your day or evening going there?
Yeah, not too bad. We're winding down. It's quite late over here now, so it's just me and the cat.
Aw, nice. All right, well, we've got a lot to unpack here. And listeners, please stay tuned towards the end of the episode as Joey's going to give us a sacred grounding, a short grounding meditation. So stay tuned for that. So if you're ready, let's get rolling.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So as I always begin my podcast with each guest, I kind of like to know how your spiritual journey with the divine feminine or witchcraft began.
Mm. It has always been a part of me, I look back at my how I was a strange little child, and I was so in love with the trees and forests and nature and sacred spaces and storytelling from as far back as I can remember. And I just think it's always been a part of me. And I didn't have labels or terms for it necessarily until later on in life when I started becoming interested that there might be a spirituality behind it. And then I started reading everything I could get my hands on, which back in the 90s, I think was mainly Wicca books and forums. It was a bit more difficult back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you grow up in England in the countryside or in urban
Yeah,
setting or in the country? Okay.
in the countryside. Yeah, I lived in originally I come from Nottingham Shire, which is the outskirts of Nottingham. So we've got quite famous forests in there.
Yes. Robin Hood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, I was big love for all things nature related. I don't feel at home in cities at all.
Yeah. So, who's influenced you the most on your spiritual or magical path? Do you have any family members or mentors that have kind of helped you on your journey?
I was thinking about this question quite a lot because I think over the years it's changed. I was really fortunate that Judika Eilis was my mentor for this book, and I grew up reading her
Oh,
book.
she's been on this
So I
show.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And
Yes.
so that's one of those really incredible moments where someone goes from sort of like a inspiration when you were growing up and reading the books to someone you know in real life. And it's like, wow, that's incredible. That's really fascinating. And then I was thinking, there are a lot of like authors who I think are really inspirational. Like Morpheus Raviana's book on Morrigan, the Great Queen, is really incredible. Stephanie Woodfield's books are really wonderful. And then
Mhm.
people who have been in your life and have supported you all the way through. So Molly Roberts, who's put out the Art Witch, and people like this who have just been such wonderful inspiration over the years. But I also did kind of want to mention, like, sometimes it's the group of people around you. I have a wonderful group of very druidic ladies around me at the minute, Jenny and Sean and Lizzie, and they're not famous particularly, but they're just these wonderful, grounding, inspirational, witchy women, and you can have conversations with and put all your ideas together. And so I was thinking it's interesting to me that like some of the most inspirational people are the people that end up being kind of your ecosystem.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. They're very solid, like the trees around us. They help us and they listen to us.
Yeah.
They support us. That's beautiful. So you're a priestess of the Morrigan. How did that come about? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, again, she has always been with me as long as I
Yes.
can remember.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize who she was for a really long time until I asked. I was like, so do you have a name? So it took me years. I was really happy working in the abstract with deity for a number of years, and I didn't feel the need to have names and labels and things until later. So I guess
Yeah.
the natural tipping point when I just became more and more curious and got to know her and her mythology and self-initiated and lived my life according to tenets that I think it's a lot of personal gnosis based on mythology, to be honest, when it comes to the Morrigan, because
Hmm.
a natural priestesshood doesn't technically exist. Um, so it is creating this life, living within her energies of trying to be honorable and live within sort of that kind of, I guess it's tenets of like the magical life, but also being in balance and trying to do the right thing and things like that. It's kind of like a moral and ethical equilibrium that you kind
Hmm.
of end
Yeah.
up wanting to honor her by your actions. So you don't want to be, I mean, I don't imagine that many of us want to be terrible people, do we? But you want to be a good person, not just for yourself and those around you, but also to sort of honor the
Yeah.
Morrigan as well.
So, what
Because
type of aspects of the Morgan do you most identify with? Because I know she's
oh
a
yeah,
great shapeshifter, and
yep, that would be the one.
yeah,
The shapeshifter aspect is definitely the one at that as a hedge witch I most deeply connect to. I always have. I loved this idea that you cannot cage her. You cannot put her into boxes because the minute you think you can describe her as she is definitely something, she shapeshifts and is like, nope. And shapeshifts into something else and your journey takes on a new layer and you start to have different understandings of her. And I love that about her. She's
hmm.
complex.
Oh, very. Yes, I'm a priestess of Bridget and moon goddesses and but Bridget, that's my actual my name, Bridget. So like you, I've always been with her, but however, I didn't really know until later what the name meant, right?
Mm.
The idea of, of a goddess and how to devote yourself to one. Um, and I think that comes later in life, usually, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really fascinating because this year I've set up a healing altar with Bridget this year.
Oh,
To,
excellent.
so that's actually off to the right-hand side of where I'm sitting right now and has the catch-all piece of art there and working with her on like healing the body and things like that. So that's a lovely
Yeah.
synchronicity.
Yes, she's powerful, powerful.
Mhm.
So when did you decide to become a hedge witch?
So I don't know if it was something that I decided or something that I just kind of always have been, and then I found the term for it.
Yeah.
Because for a really long time I was resistant to the labels. I was like, we don't need labels. And I was like, we kind of do out in the world so people know what we're talking about. Um, but
Yeah.
like I said, as a child, I was completely obsessed with nature, and hedgerows are a big thing in England, and
Yeah.
they have their own little ecosystems, and I find them fascinating, and I always have done. I found them to be really liminal and magical, so I was always really drawn to them in a physical sense, and then things like labyrinths and mazes and structures that we almost create to honor the spiritual mysteries. And I was really drawn to that. And because Hedge Witch kind of crosses the boundary between sort of spirit working and green witchcraft,
Mm.
herbalism, things
Yeah.
like that, I think that's just where I naturally gravitate.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I ever decided that was it for me, or if I just felt that that was the label that kind of fit the best, maybe.
And just for our listeners, what are hedgerows? I mean, a lot of my listeners live in different countries, besides the UK. What
Mhm.
exactly are hedgerows? Are they metaphors for boundaries, physical and spiritual? They're actual boundaries created with trees, is that right? Or bushes?
Yeah. So they're quite quintessentially British, apparently. You
Yeah.
don't often see them in other places in the physical sense. So you will see them mostly at the edge of like farming fields these days, or between woodlands and farming fields and things. And they are like these interesting half man-made, half-grown structures where trees and bushes and things are sort of grown into like living fences, I suppose is the easiest way
Yeah.
of putting it. But they create a whole ecosystem within them. So there's whole life blossoming around them and people have been trying to defend them because just like many other things in the modern day governments keep trying to, railroad them that destroys habitats.
Hmm.
So they are a physical uh, boundary
Yeah.
that you can see for certain. But I took the idea and I sort of ran with it because I don't think it's just a physical idea. And I've had it in my head for a really long time. I was like, what if hedgerows were originally the edges of the ancient forests? Like,
Mm.
what if that's what they were originally, and then they've kind of been molded and adapted as farmers have taken over that land and put it to use? Because there's just all this sort of memory, and you have folklore about witches jumping the hedge.
Right.
And jumping the hedge is a phrase for when we cross over into the spirit world or the other world,
Aha.
or we go on astral travels.
Yeah.
So that's already there as that like little tidbit of information as to hedgerows aren't just a physical thing then.
Yeah. So they can be a gateway to other worlds.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what does a hedge witch do then? I'm just curious, what do you how would you define a hedge witch and what do they do now?
A hedge witch for me is a spirit worker,
Okay.
first and foremost, who is very connected to the earth and to working with trees in particular, plants, animal spirits. So all the spirits of this, what I call the spiritual ecosystem that are interconnected. So it's this deep love of this sort of green witchcraft, but it then takes it to a very spiritual
Yeah.
place.
Right.
So there is a natural sort of gravitation towards working with and honoring the spirits of the land. And because I come about it from a Celtic perspective, it's land, sea, and sky,
Right.
which are the three Celtic realms of existence.
Mm-hmm. The sacred
And
thing. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and it's this belief in animism, so that everything has a spirit, everything vibrates, and you can connect into all of this, that we are not above, we are not apart from, we are a link within this ecosystem. And just as everything in our world is in an ecosystem in the real, physical, tangible world, so it must be in the spiritual world. So as
Mm-hmm.
above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me is the core. There's lots of little bits and pieces that can go into being a hedge witch, but that I think is what the core of it is for me.
Yeah. And in your book, I love, and we'll get to this in a minute, but I love how you talk about self-soul creation and soul rivers and Awen and the magic of trees. There's so much more than honoring just nature. There is the act of creation,
Mm,
which I find, as a priestess of Bridget and a follower of Bridget and inspiration is huge. Awen, and can you talk a little bit about creativity and creation as a
mm,
hedge witch?
yeah. So Arwen is in the Celtic tradition is a universal force and it's inspiration. So in a lot of the Celtic mythology, they talk about like drawing down Arwen, like connecting into Arwen, and then
Hmm.
it's like a universal force that exists both within you and outside of you, and is something that you can tap into in order to kind of really unlock the creativity within yourself. And that kind of act of creation comes from almost being in sort of concert with the universe and really sort of feeling into universal forces and things like that. Arwen is fascinating
Yeah,
and
definitely.
mysterious, and it really it's it's both simple and complex because on the simplest level it's you get inspired, your brain starts firing neurons, you start creating neural pathways. There's something magical in and of that act of in your body in and of itself. When you really sit and think about the brain, fascinating.
Yeah.
um I won't do that to your readers, I promise. But generally that's really a fascinating thing,
It
the way
is.
the
It is.
body
Yeah.
creates these impulses. And so when that is happening, there's this idea that like you're being universally led in some way,
Yeah.
and then you co-create. And I just think it's so interesting. It's so
Oh,
fascinating.
yeah. That's a fascinating subject in itself. You could write another book on that, all one.
Yeah.
The act of creation and inspiration, for me, I find it fascinating because I feel like it's a connection to ancient magic, really. And
Mm.
we don't really, there's no way to really label it or talk about it. It's just, it comes from within. And anyway, I just really encourage our listeners to read Joey's book and kind of delve into the self-soul creation and read about Alwyn. I find it fascinating. So when did you decide to start writing, Joey?
Wow. When did I? So the book is kind of like a love letter to my practice.
Right.
So I think I have been writing since I could hold a pen, and I'm very bardic in nature. I'm learning the druidic path now as well, and I'm like everything that I've been doing for years is actually very bardic in nature.
Hmm.
Which is an interesting discovery. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this might be some past life stuff going on right here.
Do you play a harp as well?
No, sadly, musical instruments are not in my wheelhouse. Poetry, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wordsmithing, yes. Musical instruments, unfortunately, less so. I can beat a drum, that's about
Yeah.
it. Um, and so the book kind of rose out of all of these different things that I've been writing about in sort of blogs and writing poetry for and creating
Mm.
videos around, and then the book kind of grew out of all of these things, and it was sort of like a love letter to the path that I've been walking and how I've been shaping it for so long. And so then I sort of took that, and Judica was so kind as to be really, really excited by it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much packed into this book. And were you inspired by any other authors besides Judica?
For the Hedge Witchery, I mean, one of the earliest that I read books on was Ray Beth's Hedge Witch books, which are quite old books now. And she had done letters to her students that were asking questions about what Hedge Witchery meant to them. And I found that really, really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's one of the main inspirations that has stayed with me
Hmm.
for a really long time on Hedge Witchery specifically.
Mm.
Um, and from there, it's just kind of developing with my own ideas, really, I
Yeah.
think.
And just I think growing up uh, in the hedgerows yourself and the magical English countryside. I've been to England a couple times, but I remember taking the train out to Stratford-on-Avon and out to Glastonbury and just kind of immersing myself as much as I could on a quick trip. But there's something so deeply magical about the English countryside and how fortunate you were to grow up in that environment.
Yeah, there's some beautiful, beautiful places in England. Some not so beautiful, but there are some absolutely gorgeous
Yeah.
places. If you go again, I highly recommend Cornwall.
Yes. Yes, I definitely want to go to Cornwall. But do you feel like there's in a hedge? I know there's the ley lines underneath stone circles. Do you feel like there's ley lines running underneath hedgerows?
Ooh, I
Oh,
hadn't thought of it that way. There could be. There
yeah.
absolutely could be. For me, they are very alive with memory. So
Mm.
memory is the way that I tap into these things and think
Ah,
that the land
interesting. Memory
had.
as in the history of the land and the people that
Yeah,
lived on it. Yeah.
yeah. So that land, and because everything has a soul, everything has a connection, right? Everything
Right.
has memory, and how that memory is expressed may differ on depending on what species you're connecting with. But it's like
Mhm.
trees. I think you touch a tree and think how long a tree has lived and all the things the tree has seen. And the way that that memory just seems to echo out at you from deep within its roots. I think the same is true of hedgerows. I think because hedgerows are a sort of connection between what mankind wanted nature to be and what nature was naturally. So there's this weird intertangling of the way that humans have molded hedges. And then that hedges have kind of taken that back and become their own ecosystem,
Mm.
which I love about hedges. Hedges like, no, we'll do our
Yeah. We have our own soul, okay?
hmm Yeah, we have our own ideas. Thank you, humans. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the energy that you might tap into at hedgerows really strongly is like that memory that spirits hold.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it could absolutely be ley lines as well. It wouldn't surprise me if these things
Hmm.
just naturally ended up lining up
Yeah.
in certain places because human beings are sensitive to those things even if they don't fully realize it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. As a witch living in the desert or in an urban setting, how would one be able to connect with the spirits of the hedge if we are not living near a hedgerow? Or
mhm.
is there a way that we can become a hedge witch just living wherever we are?
Yeah, and we talk about it in the book as well. So this actually feeds into memory. So
Hmm.
I believe that that memory exists in the spiritual ecosystem, even if the physical has been destroyed. So, if ancient woodlands and the borders of these ancient woodlands were the hedgerows have been destroyed, the memory of them, their memory, their spirit lives on in the spiritual ecosystem, in the spirit world.
Mm.
And because it lives on in the spirit world, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can tap into that energy. You can learn from those spirits. you can connect to what they have to say, what they have to teach, and what they remember. So it's going to be a different experience than if you're physically near a hedgerow, or you can travel out to see one, pilgrimage out to see one. It's going to be slightly different, but I think it's something that you can absolutely build and create, that you don't have to have a physical proximity to something in order to connect to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so by doing ritual, having an altar, mm, doing some witchcraft or spell work, or probably some
Yeah.
meditations, right?
Yeah, meditation is the best way to get
Yeah.
started, I think, and really sort of have those guided journeys in. And you have, as we will see, you have a sacred grove within yourself anyway. This is a visualization that Celtic witches use, to go into your inner space, and you can tap into your inner sacred grove anyway. And for me, if you do that in guided meditation, that sort of provides you like a nexus point for all groves and hedgerows and things like that,
Yes.
because that is something that you can co-create with the universe within yourself. And then that gives you a jumping off point. And then if you want to have things on your altar that give you, something tangible to touch while you're connecting into spirits and things like that, then you can absolutely do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. The sacred grove within us. So important to connect with that, and kind of challenging, I would say, in 2025 with all our distractions and cell phones and that 2D
Yeah.
kind of 2D existence.
Yeah,
It's not
it's
easy.
it's sad actually. It's a real sadness, and I think that a lot of our disconnect comes from these sorts, like we're not as tapped into the ecosystem as we once were as human beings. And
Exactly. It is
perhaps, yeah,
a challenge to tap into that unless, unless we get pretty in tune with our senses and, you know, inner world, taking the
yeah,
time to connect with our inner world. Even dream world, dreams fascinate me as well, and traveling in dreams, astral travel.
hmm.
Wonderful. So, what kind of plans do you have for the near future? Do you have any events or classes or workshops? I know you have a YouTube channel. So,
Yes. Well, most of the work that I put out is actually on Patreon now, which is the
oh,
Celtic Witch Coven Patreon, because it's a nice safe space.
okay.
So we are currently working through my planner, which was the Celtic Calling Planner, and doing sort of hedge witchery in conjunction with that. So this month is all about Blood Iweth, which is
Oh,
a
right.
Welsh goddess, for those
Hmm.
who don't know. She's a shapeshifter. She deals in sovereignty, as a lot of the Celtic goddesses do, and I find her energy fascinating. She's another really interesting goddess. So a lot of the work is through there. And then the Morrigan Ravens Retreat is currently running, and I run that twice a year online, where
Ooh,
we get to know the 9 aspects of the goddess Morrigan over 12 weeks.
ooh. So that's an online workshop?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
I would love for it to be in person one day, and that is the dream, and how we work up to that point. Um, but I currently offer that just online, yeah.
Hmm. That sounds cool. I love that. And then let's see, what is the best way for people to learn more about you and your magical offerings and your books and your events and classes and
Oh, definitely Patreon.
okay.
Patreon is definitely the place, and we have tiers for everybody. So, there's different tiers for availability and pricing and things like that. And it's the easiest way to get hold of me and contact me, and see what we're doing and what we are creating, and get also, because I'm a Virgo, you get all the goodies basically. I can't
All the
stop
details.
creating. Yeah, it's a problem. Earth signs, it's a problem.
Is it under Starry Eyed Supplies or Starry Eyed Witch, or how do people find you?
Right, so starryeyedsupplies.com is the store, and you can go to the store and find everything else connected to the store.
Okay.
Or if you want to find me on Patreon, that's Celtic Witch Coven.
All right. Well, I would like to hand it over to you now, Joey, to give us a short guided meditation or invocation to the sacred grove.
Absolutely. Okay. So I want everybody to imagine that you have a cauldron at your heart space, because in the Celtic tradition, you do. So you're just going to visualize that cauldron right in around your heart, in your inner space. And you're going to look at it and look at its shape and know that it's connected to land. This is the cauldron at heart space connected to the realm of land, the cauldron of motion. And you're just going to have a look inside there. Go and have a good look down into the deep, dark depths of this cauldron and then climb in. And you're just going to slowly float down and down and down into this cauldron. And when you find your feet on the bottom, you're going to push up. And like you're coming up and out the other end of a tunnel, you climb up and out of this giant cauldron and find yourself in your inner sacred grove. And as you climb out of the cauldron, you're on the top of a giant hill. And you can see the sky above you and the earth beneath your feet. And at the bottom of the hill, there are roads going off in all directions, and surrounding it is your grove. Trees of all shapes and sizes in all directions. And even further out than that, you can see the sea that surrounds you. And this is your inner sacred grove. This is a place where you can come and ground into yourself. This is a place of trees and plants and spirits, entirely your own, that changes and adapts and grows as you do. A place where you can connect to the divine and yourself. And if ever you need to ground, recenter, and find yourself protected, you can return here whenever you like, coming in the same way through the cauldrons. So we just take a good look around, ground into that energy, breathe into that energy, and know that we can return. So then we climb back into that giant cauldron at the very center and just float down and down until we find our feet on the base, and then push up, coming up and up, floating up through the deep darkness of the self, back into the body, back into the present moment, taking a moment to recenter yourself, back into yourself. You might wriggle your fingers, you might wriggle your toes, roll your shoulders, open your eyes again, and just come back into yourself. And now that you've opened the door, you can return whenever you like.
Hmm. Thank you. Blessed be. That was beautiful. Really, I love the symbology of the cauldron.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the three cauldron.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joey, for being on the show and inspiring us to explore parts of our soul and connect with the spirit of the land and the hedgerows and beyond, and to honor the liminal spaces between the worlds.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, blessed be. And to the listeners, again, check out Joey's book, Celtic Hedge Witchery, A Modern Approach. And thank you, all the listeners that are here with us today. So that's about it. Until next time, blessed be. Bye bye.
Bye.